Hello everyone, this is Mike and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at just enough administration with PowerShell, and this video will be part one, creating the endpoint of probably a two-part series. So if you're wondering what the heck just enough administration or a JEA is, it basically represents an extra piece of functionality you can use with PowerShell remoting. So let me switch over to my lab environment here, and I'll show you what I mean. So let's go over to my domain controller. So I'm on a 2022 domain controller, and in the last videos, I had talked about remoting. So if I kind of open up a PowerShell admin session here, and I type in get PS session configuration, we can see what remoting endpoints have been created. So when I talked about remoting in my Remoting 101 video, I had mentioned how you can enable PowerShell remoting, and when you do, you get these different endpoints that you can connect to. So if you don't specify an endpoint, you get connected to this one by default. And on an endpoint, it does specify who's allowed to connect into it. So in this case, this endpoint allows the interactive group, built-in administrators, and remote management users are who allowed to connect in. And then within an endpoint, you could then use whatever commandlets you have permission to use. Okay? So whatever your admin rights kind of give you, whatever groups you belong to that have permissions to them, and so on. Now with JEA, it allows me to create a different endpoint that I can then control what scripts, functions, and all of that stuff are available in it. So if I have a very specific admin task that I want someone to be able to do, I can create an endpoint that just has those particular PowerShell commandlets in it to be able to perform that admin task. And then I can have those commandlets run as a separate admin account, like a built-in admin account. So in this case, you're giving a user permission to connect to an endpoint. That endpoint can do like one specific thing, and the endpoint's what's actually performing the admin task, not the user themselves. So in this way, I can have admin tasks be performed by users who are not given admin permissions. So in this way, if someone's account gets compromised and someone else tries to log in with them, if they're not connected to a specific endpoint on a specific computer, they don't have any admin rights to take advantage of. Okay, so that's where JEA can come into play here, or JEA as it's pronounced, just enough administration. And this has been around in PowerShell since probably PowerShell 4, I believe. And then they added some more capability to it in PowerShell 5.1, and it is present in the PowerShell version 6 and 7 as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and walk through how to create one of these. All right, so first of all, I'm going to create an endpoint that allows a user account to be unlocked and their password reset. So let's say like a typical like admin task, if you will. And for my demo user, I'm going to be using this Jeff Kent user right here that I've used in a few previous demos as well. So first things first, I'm going to need a group. So I'll just go ahead and create a group here. And again, I could do this through PowerShell, but let's say it's a global group. And we'll do GL dash, and I'll just call it unlock. Right? So GL dash unlock. And ultimately, if you're a member of that group, which I'm going to take care of right here, let's throw Jeff Kent into that. You are going to be able to unlock Active Directory users. Right? So again, if you look at the group, who's a member of it, it's not a member of anything else. So literally, I just created a group that has not been given permission to anything. Right? And if I go back to my Jeff Kent user, He is a member of a few groups here, but again, these are just for the nesting demo that I did, I don't know, 5 or 6 videos ago. Okay, so again, no Active Directory permissions have been assigned through any of these. He's just a regular domain user and so on. All right, so we have GL-unlock is going to be the group in question here. All right, so now we want to go ahead and create an endpoint to go along with this. All right. So the first things first, creating an endpoint is basically done by creating a module, right? So where your modules go, like for instance, on my domain controller here, if I go look at my C drive, program files, Windows PowerShell, modules, and I can see what modules are available here, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and make one here, and I'm going to call it unlock. Okay, that's ultimately going to be the name of my module, which is going to be the name of my JEA endpoint, my JEA endpoint. Okay, so now that we have that, let's dive back into PowerShell here, and basically the commandlets that I'm going to need in order to do an unlock, and this is kind of like the prerequisite stuff that you might need to know ahead of time. In order to properly do an unlock, you would need to be able to do search AD account, unlock AD account, oops, unlock AD account. There's set AD account password. So set AD account password. And I'm also going to need convert to secure string. Convert to secure string. So those are going to be, oh, and probably set AD user. Okay, gotta tell the user to change their password in the next logon. So those are going to be the 5 commandlets that I'm going to need to include in the endpoint for Jeff Kent to be able to reset user accounts. Okay. So that's kind of part of the prerequisite work you would need to do up front is know what commandlets you wanted to bake into your endpoint, right? So in order to lock something down, you need to know specifically what they're going to need to do as far as commandlets go. Right, so this is no different than any other task. Like if you look at the Microsoft documentation on working with JEA, that is they do a demo of creating a DNS admin, and go through the commandlets you would need to use DNS. Right? So if you wanted to kind of walk through their stuff, again, they do have, let me open up Google here for a sec here. They do have some documentation on using just enough administration, right? So I'll take the link for this and I'll throw it in the description of the video if you wanted to kind of cruise through Microsoft's documentation as well, which is, it's pretty thorough. Walks through the prereqs, creating the role capability, the session config, registering it, using it, and so on. All right. So that's basically what I'm going to need to incorporate. All right. So let's go back in PowerShell here, and I'm going to change over to that directory, program files, Windows PowerShell, modules, and then what did I call it? Unlock? Yeah. Okay. So there we go. And there is absolutely nothing there at the moment. Right? So first thing we're going to need is we're going to need to make a module manifest. Right? So we're not going to have much in it, but we're going to do a new module manifest path here, local directory backslash unlock.psd1. Okay, and that gets me just basically a manifest file. And hold on one sec. Be nice if I could see my file extensions. All right. So we have that in there, right? And again, it's just a simple manifest file that goes with making a module, right? So I'm not going to take the time to put much stuff in here. It just, empty is fine, right? The one that comes by default. All right, so next thing is, actually I should have had this open here. Next thing, I need a folder underneath the module here. So we're going to go and do a new folder, and we're going to call this role capabilities. Role capabilities. So with making a JEA endpoint, we're going to make a couple config files, and those config files need to be in your module folder in a subfolder called role capabilities. Right? So that's where we're going to be working in. Right? So however you want to make that folder, I just happen to make it straight like that, and away we go. All right. So next step here is we're going to need a role capability file. Okay, so the role capability files kind of define what's allowed to be done through whatever endpoint we're going to make here, right? So like what commandlets are available, what functions are available, stuff like that. And to make a role capability file, it's basically a new PS role capability file. So there's a lot of parameters on it, but you could just start off with just path, and then we're going to make this in the local directory / role capability subfolder, and we're going to call it unlock.psrc for role capability. All right. So we're going to go ahead and make that file. All right. So we can see if I look in role capabilities, there's that file. Now, what I want to do is I want to look at that file. So I'm going to open it up in an editor. I have the ISE here, so I'm just going to be using that. But if you want to use Visual Studio Code, that's fine as well. However you get an edit happen. Heck, you could even edit this thing in Notepad if you wanted to. All right, so here is the role capability file. And for the most part, most of the sections that you're going to want to fill out are commented out. Okay, so this allows me to add in different sections here. So if I want to do visible commandlets, which I'm totally going to be doing, I can uncomment that section. Visible functions, I'm going to uncomment that. Oops. Uncomment that one. Let's see, function definitions, I'm going to uncomment that one. Okay, so you can add a few pieces in here. Close that because it's annoying. So you can add a few pieces in here for what you want to do. All right. So anyway, I apologize. That just locked up for a moment. Okay, so Edge just went on the fritz on me here. Okay. So anyway, so that's where we're at here. We're going to uncomment a few of these sections here for what we want to do. All right. So let's start off with, let's say, visible commandlets. So these would be whatever commandlets I want to expose. And if you look here, like you can add in commandlets by name. Like if I wanted to expose unlock AD account, let's say. Okay, so I can add that in there. However, if you want to get a little fancier, you can go and put in a hash table the kind of a bunch of name value pairs where you have a name and the commandlet you want to expose, and then parameters, and then that goes in its own kind of hash table. So I could say, like, I want to use this particular parameter, and even what values you want to go with that parameter. So basically what's happening here would be I'm exposing this commandlet with a parameter called parameter1, and it would accept the values item1 or item2. And then you could do another hash table for another parameter if you wanted to expose that. And in this case, it would take for values on it anything that starts with the capital letter L. All right, so you can get pretty picky about what you wanted to do. So I don't need any of that at the moment, so I'm just going to delete all of that. And we can then start from scratch here. Okay, so what I could do also to make these stand out a little bit is each time you have something, put it on its own line. So we have a comma. Let's make the next entry here for the commandlets we're going to need. So I did unlock AD account. Let's do the set AD user one next, because that'll utilize those tricks that I was talking about. So in this case, that's going to be a hash table. And then inside the hash table, we'll do name equals, and then the name of the commandlet, which was set AD user. All right. And then a semicolon, and then what parameters I want to make available. So parameters equals, and then that would be another hash table. And then inside of that, the name of the parameter I want to expose would be change password at logon. Okay, so that would literally be the parameter I want to expose for that. Okay, and again, I'm going to need another parameter. So again, that would be, so kind of this one's its own little hash table here, right? And so, and again, this is inside of the overall larger hash table, which ends right there and begins right there. So I need to put a comma right there. And we're going to do another hash table to expose another parameter. So this time it would be name equals, and the parameter I want to expose is identity, right? Like so. So that would allow me to use set AD user with the change password at logon parameter and the identity parameter. All right, so then we're going to do a comma, and then the next commandlet I want to expose would be set AD account password. And put it in quotes. Let's forget that. I think I'm writing code, so I'm not putting things in quotes. And then we want convert to secure. Secure. There we go. Okay, so we want that commandlet as well. All right, so unlock AD account, set AD user, set AD account password, and convert to secure strings. That covers 4. The 5th one that I want to do, I'm going to do something a little different here. And what I want to do is we're going to make a function out of the get search, out of the search AD account here. Because basically what I'm going to end up doing here is in part 2 of the video, I'm going to make a GUI-based script that utilizes this endpoint. So that someone can fire up a script, it opens up a GUI, and they could select the user that's locked to unlock. They could put in what the new password is if they want to reset the password, and so on. So in order to do that, I want to make this spit out the exact information that I'm going to use in my script that will utilize this endpoint. So if you just do search AD account, you can search on an unlocked or a locked out parameter, but it does give you the AD account. If I want to then pipe that to something else, I need to just grab like the username part of it, the SAM account name part of it. So in order to do that, I can make a function out of that. So see this function definition right here. I could go ahead and put together a function, again, inside of a hash table. So for the function definition, I got to give the function a name that will exist just in this endpoint. So maybe I'll call my function get locked users. Right? Just keep it something simple like that. That again describes what it's doing in kind of PowerShell nomenclature here. And then the next name value pair would be script block equals, right? And then a script block element. Right? So in this case, the commandlet I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be using search AD account, and specifically for locked out accounts, I'm going to pipe that to then grab, and I'm going to carriage return this so it's just easier to look at here. I'm going to pipe that over to select object, and we're going to maybe expand property, SAM account name. So that'll grab the values out of this property and expose those when this function is run. All right. Now the downside of creating kind of a restricted endpoint here, that's kind of what we're making with JEA. We're locking down what commandlets could be done. Select object is not one of my 5 that I need, if you will. Okay. So in order to be able to use that, I don't necessarily want to expose it up here because select object could be used for other things as well. I just want to use it in conjunction with this commandlet here. So hence why I'm putting it in a function. So if you have commandlets that need to be run, but you don't want to expose the commandlet to use in the endpoint by the user, you could write functions that utilize those commandlets. So that way the user using the endpoint can just run the function and not be able to access the underlying commandlets in it. So the downer of that sometimes is when you want to use the endpoint, you sometimes have to fully qualify the commandlet in question here. So basically, like I'm going to be locking down the rest of the config here when I make a session capability file. So I'll kind of talk about that when I get there. But for now, what I need to do is I need to fully qualify this commandlet here so that it would be able to be run. And basically what you do is you put the module that it's a part of. So for instance, select object is in the Microsoft .PowerShell .utility module, and then backslash, and then the name of the actual commandlet. Okay, like so. Okay, now again, if you're not sure what module something is in, you could always at a PowerShell console type get command select object, and that would show you where it was coming from. Okay, so if I want to just maybe pipe this over to like select star, I could see that this commandlet select object is coming out of find the source property here. Um, there's source, and you could see the module that it's coming out of. Right? So that's what I want to put in there. And then I need to go back and what did I call this thing? Get locked users. I need to then expose that function in this visible functions section here. All right, so I'm going to go put that in, get locked users. And then let's see, one other thing I probably want to do here is modules to import. I am doing Active Directory stuff, so I should probably put Active Directory in there, and I don't need anything else. In fact, let's get rid of that comma and uncomment this line out. Right? So it's loading the Active Directory module. We have these commandlets that we're exposing, visible function, the function defined right here, right? And that should be good enough for what we need for role capability. So I could go ahead and save that file. All right. Now, the next step is we're going to need to make a session capability file or an SC. So this file extension for the role capability was PSRC, and we're going to make another file PSSC for session capability. All right. Now the session capability, let me go ahead and create that here. So the session capability file is made again through a PowerShell commandlet. So I could do new PS session configuration file, and we'll give it a path. And the path in this case would be the local directory backslash role capability subfolder. And whatever you called your role capability file, you're going to call your session capability file the same name. So in this case, I was using the word unlock, which is also the name of the module here. So unlock.pssc, right, like so. So I go ahead and create that, and that now gives me this file right here, right? And it does have some structure in it. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up, and we're going to edit a few things in here. All right. So the first thing here, I'm probably going to want to change the session type. So there's a few ones you can use here. You can see kind of in the help, or, the comment field here, it's restricted remote server. That's the one that I'm going to use. You could also have empty or default. So default basically, sets the endpoint like a regular PowerShell endpoint that we use with remoting. With restricted remote server, it locks the endpoint down to using a very few specific PowerShell, like let's say default commandlets. So you could use clear host, exit PS session, get command, get form data, help, measure object, out default, um, and select object by default. All right. So we're going to put that into there. And then we could also use whatever commandlets we added in our role capability file, by the way. So can't miss out on that. So we'll change that. The next one here is this run as virtual account. So I'm going to actually, enable that. So I'm going to just uncomment it to make it happen here. And what that does is that allows anything that's run in this endpoint, any commandlets that are run in this endpoint, to execute as an admin account. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to be unlocking accounts as this group here that I had made earlier, this GL unlock, and that group doesn't have any Active Directory permissions. So that the people who are a member of that group, they will be running commandlets in this endpoint, and anything they run will be executed as an admin. Okay, so with run as virtual account, if the endpoint is on a member server, the commandlets will execute as a local admin account. And if you have this endpoint on a domain controller, the commandlets execute as a domain admin account. Okay, so this is a way to have, again, someone who is not an admin be able to do admin specific tasks, provided they connect to this specific endpoint, which is definitely why you want to lock it down. All right, so hence that's that role capability file that I made earlier. Locked down to specific commandlets that I want to be able to use within this endpoint, because everything in this endpoint will run as an admin. Okay, even though the user themselves does not have admin permissions. All right. So then we're going to need the role definition. So I want to uncomment this part. And this is where I can add in who's allowed to connect here. So again, it is kind of a hash table. And I need the group in question. So my Active Directory domain is chassis tech backslash, and what the heck did I call the group? It was GL unlock, I believe. Okay. So that would be the name of the group. And then the role capabilities, the role capability that I'm creating was just called unlock. Right, and that's it. Right, so let's clear out the rest of the fluff here. I don't need any of that other stuff. And then just close out the hash table. Right, so we've got the name and then the role capability that it's going to be using, which again I called unlock. So remember, everything kind of here I'm going the unlock theme. So the role capability file was unlock, the name of the module was unlock, so you can kind of get the trend for what I'm doing here. Okay, so that gets that in place. And let's see, I need to find one other thing in here. Um, so in this case, not everything is listed out here. There are other sections you can have in here. And one of those that I need to add in here is going to be a section called language mode. So language mode by default is set to, I believe it's no language, which does not give me any type of PowerShell system ability, like doing like tab completion or using variables or stuff like that. I need to use variables because ultimately I'm going to be running a script in here, and I'm going to need to store some things in variables within that script. Okay, so I'm going to set the language mode here to full language. Okay, like so. All right, so full language. Probably should capitalize that so it looks a little cleaner. All right, so full language, making sure I didn't typo that or anything. All right, so that gets our session capability file created. So I can go ahead and save that. And then what might be a good idea to use after you've created that is to do a test on it quick. So there is a commandlet called test ps session configuration file. Right? Thank God for tab complete. The path, my local directory, backslash the role capability subfolder, and then unlock.pssc. And then if you get a true back, that should mean your session capability file is correct, no typos in it, things like that. All right, so now let's go ahead and register this new endpoint here. So we're going to use register ps session configuration. The name that we're going to call this is unlock. All right, and the path, okay, so the path, local directory, backslash role capability subfolder, backslash unlock.pssc. All right, so we got a few warnings here. Register PS configuration may need to restart the WinRM service. If the config using this name has recently been unregistered, certain system structs may be cached. In that case, a restart of WinRM may be required. And again, it's just kind of bugging me right here. May need to do a restart. So basically, like, there's enough warnings there that restart service name WinRM. So let's go ahead and restart it. And then if we could do get PS session configuration, we should see there's our unlock endpoint right there. And you could see who is allowed to currently get in. All right. So good enough there. And now the final kind of proof in the pudding here, we need to go and connect to it. Okay, so let me switch over to my client VM, which, bear with me one sec, there we go. All right, now I am currently logged into this VM as Jeff Kent, but I'm going to log out for a sec to then be able to log back in because I added myself to a group and I need to be able to show that group there. And this is totally blacking out on me. That's nice. Let's see. Can I do, oh, there we go. Okay. So let me log in as Jeff Kent again. And the reason why, again, I had to log out and log back in was because I added this user to a new group. All right, let's see here. I need an enhanced session. So I apologize here. I'm using Hyper-V here. So when you turn on an enhanced session, it wants you to relog in. All right. So now we're logged in. So we'll go ahead and start up. I don't think I can do PowerShell admin because this user is not an admin, right? So I'll say no on that. So let's just open a regular PowerShell session. And again, Jeff Kent is not an admin. Let me just make the font a little bigger here. Layout, maybe like 100 by 30. That looks good. All right. So make the font a little bigger, change the directory over to C drive. Okay. So, and again, who am I? Okay, that's it. And let's do maybe a GP results /R. And so I can see as far as the user is concerned, I know you're like, why are you doing a GP result? This is a PowerShell video. Well, this is a good way to see what groups are in the user's account token. So I could see that domain users, everyone, remote desktop, console. So notice there's the GL unlock right there. And these nested groups. So anyway, so I can look at this and see that there's no Active Directory related groups that this user is a member of. Okay, so that's kind of the, there's nothing up my sleeve approach here. Okay, so now let's connect to this endpoint here. So I'll use enter PS session just because that'll be easier to kind of work here to show what's going on in it. And the computer name in question was DC1 and the configure. Now, if I just do this on its own, it should give me like no thank you. Okay, so you should see access is denied. Okay, because again, by default, it's connecting to um, the PowerShell endpoint that I don't have permission to. So it's going into the default one, which again, let me switch back over to the domain controller here. And this is the one it connects to by default if you don't tell it what endpoint you want to get into. And if you look here, who's allowed? Built-in administrators, remote desktop users. So these are the built-in ones, right? This is Active Directory stuff. So the Jeff Kent user is not a member of either of these, and certainly is not a member of the interactive group either. All right. So let's go back down to the client and let's specify the unlock endpoint by doing configuration name unlock. And that lets me in. So now if I do who am I, first of all, it doesn't want to do that because that's not one of the things I have allowed through this endpoint. So I would have had to add that into the role capability file as programs or executables that could be worked. So, but I could do get command, and these are all of the commandlets that are available. So there's the function that I defined, get locked users. We have unlock AD account, set AD account password, convert to secure string, set AD user. So those are the four, and then this function, which was inside that function, was doing set, not set, search AD account to find the locked out users. So in fact, if I have any locked out users, I can do get locked users, and in this case, I don't have any, so nothing was coming back there. But anyway, so that's creating the endpoint itself. And then if the user wants to get out of it, they could do exit um, PS session, and then they are back out of it, right? So that is creating the endpoint. So again, this will be part one here, and then I'm gonna put a video up soon on a part two, which I will be making a GUI application that will be able to utilize that endpoint, right? So basically the user can run a script, pops up a GUI, they could pick what user to unlock, put in the new credentials, passwords, whatever they want, hit OK, and it works. So look for that in a part two. And if anybody is interested in seeing, again, another build of a graphical script, you could do that, and I'm going to be using the techniques that I used in my creating a GUI-based script part one. I'm going to be using the forms library to do that. So check that video out as well. All right, so that'll do it for this one. So that gets our endpoint made. If anybody has any questions, feel free to post them down in the comments. Like always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like, and I would certainly appreciate a subscribe. Again, when you're building your channel out from the beginning, subscribers are the most important piece in YouTube's world, if you will. So I would certainly appreciate a subscribe if y'all could. It helps me out, doesn't cost you a penny, and again, would be greatly appreciated. So with that, be on the lookout for the part two to go along with this coming out soon. And with that, we'll see you in the next video. Have a good one, everyone.